Name one. Name me
Name
one.
what?
Name me one
What?
good MMO that you
Right now?
that you support. That you support.
Right now in
Right now,
2024.
in
What an
2024.
MMO you should play?
Hmm. We're going to begin. Welcome, everybody. This is our first official episode. I'm joined here by my good friend, Nico Tullo. Hello.
Hello, what's up?
And we have decided that we are going to try an MMO podcast where we talk about an MMO or news relative to MMOs every week. And hopefully this will be good content for you MMO Andies out there. Nico and we dive into a lot of MMOs, as most of you guys know. And I feel like this would be a good opportunity, or this content would be, what's the best way to phrase this? This content would be good for you guys that are just in the perma MMO waiting room, because let's be real here, that's what it is. It's been like that for like we've been in the MMO waiting for my next MMO for like the past 20 years. So we get to discuss it. Anyways, Nico, could you maybe introduce yourself, because this is our first episode, so maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourselves for those of you who may not know who Nico is.
Welcome, guys. You might hear some dogs in the background. I apologize in advance. Yeah, so I also cover a lot of MMOs, just like Kanon, although my approach is a little more, let's say, skeptical. And I think that's also why Kanon invited me in the first place, because it's a little bit of a a confrontation of two ways of thinking about it. So it's probably a little bit more interesting of a discussion than just two people agreeing with each other all the time. So yeah, it's probably going to be super interesting.
Yes, as Nico mentioned, Nico and we've been good friends for a long time. Actually, Nico was one of my first content creating friends when I started to do content creating seriously. And I have a lot of respect for Nico. Nico is one of the few content creators in the space that has actually played a lot of MMOs and puts in the hours. And when I mean hours is subjective. You know, I'm going to say that, and you're always going to have the Andies in chat or in the comment section being like, oh, you only put in 50 hours. Well, 50 hours in like 1 week is pretty good, right? So, you know what I mean? Because we got to cover a lot of things. So I have a lot of respect for Nico, but like Nico mentioned, Nico has more, a lot of you guys, like some of you guys in chat right now are saying doomer chat, or doomer perspective. Nico has more of a skeptical perspective, and I'm more of an optimist. I usually have more of an optimistic perspective. And Nico and since the beginning of time, as far as I've known him, we've always had differing opinions and different perspectives. So yeah, I thought that would be a great dynamic for you guys. That way we're not just, always in agreement. Create some content for you guys. So today's episode, the first episode, is a little bit about the show. So long intro, I apologize, but also just general MMO stuff, since it is the first episode, right? And then each episode after this will probably go into more specific games and tackle that one by one. But today, let's start with just the general state of MMOs. Nico, I know you think that the MMOs are in a very good state in 2023 or 2024.
Amazing. They're in
state.
such a good state. I played Tekken, okay? They're popping off.
Did you hear about the Tekken MMO?
No. What is that?
It's a good idea is what it is. It's a good idea.
Oh, I mean, I'm down for any MMO at this point. Like, there's so few, let's just say, like, big titles releasing. There's the occasional indie MMO that's kind of sprinkled in, and if you're really into that niche, oh yeah, that's kind of your thing. But for the most part, let's be honest, the last actual MMO release was like what, over 2 years ago now with Lost Ark. It's crazy, by the way, that's been 2 years. But yeah, that's probably the last one, right?
Oh man, you're talking about like the last major release?
Yeah.
Okay. this is bothering me. I'm so sorry. I just there we go. The full screen thing. That's sorry, guys. Yeah, I think sorry. Lost Ark. I feel like Lost Ark 2 years ago. Was there no?
Yeah, New World was before that. That was like
It was
half a year before that. Roughly.
Was there nothing last year? No, oh no, I was thinking Diablo 4. Yeah, you're right.
Not as I'm aware of.
I dove into every quote unquote major online RPG release since, and yes, you're right. I think the biggest one was Diablo 4, but which isn't. It's like 20% MMO, right? It's like 20-30% MMO. But it's obviously an ARPG. MMO is in like it's got an open world, pretty much. Yeah, it was Diablo 4, and then what the hell? I guess
you could
Diablo
say
4?
Team Blue Protocol, but obviously not in the West, right?
That true. Those are the next two games that I tackled, but they're Asian releases. Yeah. So what do you think, man?
I think it's since I started covering MMOs, which was basically with BDO release, which is like 8 years ago now, or was like super casually covering it for the most part. I think there has been like a similar drought about like a year or two before New World and Lost Ark happened, where there was absolutely nothing. There's just like this talking about, oh yeah, maybe there's gonna be this one game. We saw a trailer of it like 3 years ago. Maybe it's gonna release at some point. Who knows, right? A similar phase already existed before that, so I wouldn't say it's the worst MMOs have ever been, but it's pretty close.
So a little bit of critical thinking here, Nico. I've thought about this in the shower in my alone time quite a bit. Okay, now I think everyone here is in agreement, right, that this current state of MMOs not great, right? Not great, like overall. Now here's the thing, though. Question number one: when has it ever been good? Right. Number two, do you think maybe it actually has been good? And if we take it to it has actually been good and getting better, and you can even take that to extreme, saying that it's maybe close to being one of the best it's ever been. I'm just saying, like, I'm not saying this is what this is what I'm thinking. I'm just saying, play devil's advocate here, critical thinking. But we've just been immune to it because of our standard of MMO being higher over the years, because each and every game that does come out has been getting better, but we're immune to that because it's just like we want more, we want better, we want more, we want better. Have you ever thought about that maybe?
So I think, well, first of all, I think the best state of MMOs was like 15, 17-ish years ago, right after WoW released. WoW was insane, and then like a lot of games tried to copy that insanity to an extent.
I'm so sorry, Nico. This dude in chat. If Dog and Liberty is getting better, we're so fucked right now.
I agree with that.
I'm so sorry. That shit is hilarious, man. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
When there was still auto combat, right? When there was still auto combat happening in Thorn Liberty, I said like something along the lines of the free-to-play copies of WoW are better than that. That we used to have like 10 years ago. Now, obviously, Thorn got a little bit better, so it's I don't know if I would still stand by that statement, but overall, the golden ages of MMOs are definitely not now.
When was the golden age, would you say?
Probably from 2004, 5-ish, so when WoW released, basically. Maybe even a little bit before that with RuneScape.
Sure.
Up until probably the 2010s-ish. There were so many games releasing. None of them were that great, but all of them were okay. And then I think like we had games like Arc Age. I think Arc Age was a little bit later, so maybe like 2012-ish.
See, bro, I don't think there was ever a golden age. I think, like, if you think about this, I think when people are referring to like, oh, back in the day, MMOs were great and we're out of touch right now, I actually low-key kind of disagree with that, because I feel like, RuneScape Classic WoW. Yes, these games are good, and the fact that a lot of people are still playing them today is a testament to that, right? Like, so the thought of oh, you know, our MMOs right now are worse than back then because RuneScape and Classic WoW are still good and they still have a higher player base. True. However, I don't think there was really a golden age, because outside of those few titles, we might be missing one or two there, but outside of those, out of all of the other MMOs that have ever released have just fallen off, or have not been very good, or have not been in that, you know, upper echelon of MMOs. So like, to me, I'm just thinking, okay, well, if there was only ever like 3, maybe 4 MMOs of all time that were actually GOAT status or close to, it's like, did we ever really have a golden age of MMOs? It just seems like, we've been, yeah.
And that, I mean, obviously that's true, right? There's not really been a whole lot of banger MMOs that have stood the test of time over the years.
Mhm.
I will say, though, I think games like RuneScape, like Guild Wars 1, like WoW, were
I have a question.
Much higher quality for their time than anything we've gotten like in a long time.
I have a quick question, Mister. I'm gonna let you cook here. I'm sorry. I also want this podcast to be a little bit more interactive with chat. I usually don't take too many questions. You know what I mean? Lumen, you're saying it's because you're young, you don't know the history. Question: how old are you? Just honest question. Go ahead, Nico. Go ahead. Sorry. I'm just genuinely curious.
I just think that that's always the kind of comparison that I make, and that's why I rate MMOs so lowly, probably. Is because I think in 2004, or 2005-ish, when WoW first released, the game had 8 races, factions, a world probably 15 times of any modern MMO, had like 60 abilities per class. Talent trees, professions, like profession quest lines with legendary weapons, raids, dungeons, PvP. It was way more overall. Like, just in general, there was just more. And that's why I always compare games to. Obviously, Classic WoW nowadays is outdated, and it's a lot of people still play it, and it's still a great game. But obviously, it's not. Yeah, it's not a 10 out of 10 game in 2024, obviously.
Okay, right. That was where I was going to kind of go with that, comparing it to modern day because of our higher standard. 43 years old. So that narrative of, okay, so just so you know, I'm 36. Okay, so I'm fucking old. There are not that many people higher level than me IRL in my chat. Okay, let's just put it that way. Yes, you know, I will tip my hat to the gaming elders. You're there, you got it. But let's be real here. At my age, I would absolutely be in that age bracket where I could talk about the old days, okay? Because like, if you have to be 43 years old to be like, to really understand like how older MMOs, because like that narrative of older MMOs being better than modern day MMOs is not exclusively coming from 43-year-olds, right? They're coming from people that are like 30 plus, 35 plus, right? So to kind of go with what you're saying there, Nico, that's another thing that's always been kind of on my mind when it comes to these comparisons, because it's like, I don't know, man. Classic WoW, yeah, the gameplay and everything's great, but especially, I think RuneScape's a better example of this. I tried RuneScape, by the way. I could absolutely see the appeal, but it's like, bro, clearly no one's playing RuneScape for action combat. Let's just put it that way. You know what I mean? Sure, there is an appeal to it, like with the with the GCDs and stuff, but it's like you're playing it for the gameplay. And those graphics, it's just outdated. Exactly what you're saying. You know, like you can appreciate an 80s action classic movie where it's just everything's over the top. You know, it's not high def. Listen, Top Gun, one of the greatest movies of all time to this day. But if you're comparing the special effects to modern day standard, it's just not there, right? On that note, I got another question. This is kind of jumping around, but why is it that why is it that Western developers just have shitty looking models?
That's also I mean, New
Why
World
is
is the best
that?
example of that, probably, right?
Like, what
Like
is
New World
that?
is ugly as sin, man. That game is so ugly. The characters are ugly, the outfits are ugly, the everything. In
Bro,
my
it's
opinion,
like,
anyways.
yeah, it's like you have two options. You can go Western MMO, no pay to win, or less pay to win, but shitty looking fucking characters, or you can go Korean MMO, Asian MMO, great graphics, great looking characters, sexy characters, but pay to win. Can't we have like a mixture of both? Like,
Yeah, I don't know why. I mean, again, I think there's also much less studios nowadays even trying to make a game like that. That is like the next groundbreaking, all encompassing MMO that covers all the fronts, which is PvP, PvE, open world, economy, everything, right? There's
yeah,
very few games that try to do all of it nowadays. That also probably contributes to that. But coming back to the previous point a little bit,
yeah.
uh, I always like to compare a new release as WoW in 2004. So what I'm saying is, like, if a new MMO releases in 2024, is it worse or better than WoW was in 2004? Like, in that comparison. So for the year that we're in, how good is it comparatively? And usually it's not very good. Like, usually they're very lackluster. Usually they have very little content or very little content avenues. As I just said, maybe some games like Blue Protocol don't even have PvP in the first place and don't even bother with it. They kind of have a little bit of even a smaller twist to open world, even that there's like these little loading zones. It's
Segments,
not
yeah.
really, yeah. And it's like, it's kind of just feels like overall a lot of these approaches have regressed and kind of pushed more into very niche appeals instead of having like this overall world feeling, you know?
I feel, yeah, no, I get you. That's one of the things I liked about Vanilla Arcade. I mean, we can get into
Yep,
Vanilla Arcade at
true.
another time. That is on the episode list, but that was an actual world. They had teleports and whatnot, but they had an actual world. What do you think? What do you know what do you think? Actually, let me ask you. What do you think about a remastered WoW Classic?
I mean, okay, so we have Season of Discovery right now, right?
I'm talking
Which
like
is,
graphically though.
yeah. So for me,
Yeah.
I think um that's one of the easiest way to make giga money for Blizzard, and they just don't understand like the first thing about making games anymore, which is not surprising. But I think it would be amazing, like having something like a RuneScape, old school RuneScape approach, and also updating the game to look more appealing for a modern audience. So combining updated, maybe even engine and graphic settings, maybe also with better netcode and whatever, with the old version of the game, and then updating the old version to have like the similar old school feel, I think would be insane. But there's
Right.
no way they're gonna do that, because they're already making Season of Discovery, which is basically just the gimmick version of that, where they just have, oh, we have some abilities that we found from other expansions, we just sprinkle it into the old game, here you go, done.
Are
And
your
here's a
head
new raid, by the way.
are your headphones being put together by tape?
Yes.
Somebody listen, if you're watching this video.
No, it's actually a separate microphone, because the normal headset microphone is
Oh.
trash. So I bought a separate microphone, and that doesn't fit into the plug thing. So I just
Oh,
taped it to it.
taped it.
Yep.
Listen, chat. For those of you who are watching on YouTube, if you are representing a company, I think Nico Tulo is accepting microphone sponsorships. Okay. I think Elgato's
Only
got some
only
good
ones that
ones.
aren't these fucking massive ass arms, though, because that annoys the ever living shit out of me. So I need something that is like
Like
on the
these
headset. Okay.
arms. Oh, like you need to
Yeah.
have, really? Okay, okay.
Yep.
Interesting. Okay, okay. All right. Well, listen, we're already like 15, 20 minutes into this. This is how excuse me, excuse me, sorry, how fast time goes when we're doing these podcasts. So let's just start jumping into the next category here, because even that category, the general state of MMOs, man, we could literally talk about that all day, like literally all day. So let's jump into the upcoming MMOs, because that's the next category that I do want to talk about today. I know Ashes of Creation is not coming out, but Alpha 2 is. And I think Ashes has such a huge following, and it has such high expectations from a large group of people, where Alpha 2 comes slated to come out Q3, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. Q3 this year is kind of being treated like a soft release, right? What do you think about Ashes?
So good timing, because I was kind of maybe considering also making a video about this. But in general, well, I've contemplated making something about it, because it's always not sit very well with me, the game in its entirety. Although I think they're, in theory, on paper, things that they have are very interesting. So the node system and the way you augment your classes, and there's like combination of classes, a little bit like ArcAge, and all of those things are actually super cool, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But what they've shown is like a fraction of what they're trying to do. And by a fraction, I mean not like, oh, they're like half the way there, maybe another 2 years there. I mean like they're maybe 5-10% the way they're what they're trying to do. And that, I think, is the biggest problem.
What do you mean by that?
So what, for example, I don't know if you've seen the recent showcase where they talked
Caravan.
about a little bit. Now there was
not the other one. Okay.
So there's another new one, but the Caravan is also a good example, I guess.
Yeah, I didn't see the latest one. Yeah.
Let's take the Caravan then. And the Caravan example was like this little bit of a PvP showcase, risk versus reward kind of thing, where they have a caravan with trade goods, and one guild tries to transport it and the other one tries to attack it, right? So even in that, you could already tell very quickly that, first of all, they had their little theater play. That's always what they do, obviously, because they're trying to showcase something, and it's not really properly pre-recorded, so they kind of just wing it. But they have like a concept, obviously, before they record it. So they have this setup. Oh, this caravan is going through this pathway, and we are ambushing them. No one expected this, okay? Oh, we're going to be in stealth, and then we count down from 3, and then we're going to ambush them and steal everything. And that they did that. And then there's these little trade goods and how you acquire them. It's all like makes sense. But in an actual real scenario, none of those things work together at all, or like that's not a realistic way to approach this at all. Because first of all, the caravan is by like a guild of 30 people. That's probably not even profitable at all. So in a real scenario, you will probably have a lot of caravans with a lot more people.
That's
like,
a good point.
from Throne,
sure.
With a lot of, like in Throne, it's also kind of like that, where Zerging becomes very profitable because there's no restrictions to it. So if there is a risk involved, you obviously don't want to risk losing your stuff. So you will make sure that you don't. But then at the same time, if it's not profitable enough, can you even get enough people? Will there not just be other guilds scouting for this kind of stuff to happen? Because these caravans are like incredibly slow. There will be people just waiting in front of towns for arriving caravans and just ambush them right there to just collect the loot immediately. Like there's so many systems that surround this that they don't even mention. And the new showcase has one more interesting part, which a lot of these events, the node upgrading, seems to be a console command or something that isn't actually completely tied to the game yet. So it just feels like, oh, we're showing you how this might work in the future, but they don't have an existing product that they can showcase. They kind of just have these theater plays, I call them.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. So what I would say to that is, number one, to be fair, they are showcasing content and systems in the game. So realistically, I don't know if it would be possible for them to really show multiple scenarios and all of like the intricate details to it. I mean, we're obviously going to find out relatively soon in the alpha test, right? But to rebuttal your first comment in regards to like the situations and the depth of like the caravan, and in regards to like the situations that and the reality of what it's going to actually be like in live, did you play ArcAge, original ArcAge?
And no, only Unchained, but I heard a lot of things.
Sure, I think you would have liked it, but I think it's going to be in line with vanilla ArcAge. that also really depends on the design of the world and the design of the caravan systems. And what I mean by that is like just like turn-in spots and how you go about turning in, because in Arcade you absolutely did have situations where you had mass guilds going in, trying to turn into the most profitable area. But you also had small groups. You also had solo players doing like solo pack runs. So like for me, right, the way it would work is like if I wanted to do a pack run, I can turn in a single pack on my back in a safe zone, uncontested, guaranteed, bam, 20 gold. I could upgrade that by purchasing and investing in like a farm cart that would allow me to transport 3 packs at a time. I can upgrade that to a hauler that would allow me to transport 5 packs at a time, and then so on and so forth, and then of course, you'd have people that were running alts on alt machines and virtual machines that were fucking running all these packs, all that stuff, right? But you had safe zones, and then you also had like PvP zones. In the PvP zones were areas where you would have people that were kind of contest that because they were more profitable, the packs that coming in, but those were also less, there was less traffic in those areas, right? So and honestly, it was a pretty good system, but to your defense, yeah, I can see it being problematic, but I think it's just a design thing, which yeah.
Even if, let's say, the system works out well and they actually have a functioning system, which I don't think they have yet.
Sure.
Let's assume it works. I think there's a big reason why people also disliked Arcade for exactly that too, right? Because a lot of people had like this thing planned out and they're fishing out in the ocean, and then they come back and they want to get their reward, and there's a bunch of red players or whatever you call them in Arcade who just obliterate them and steal everything, right? And I think for a lot of people that would probably be a point where like, yeah, I think I'm good.
Sure.
I'm gonna not play anymore.
Okay, so yes and no. You're right when it comes to like every other MMO. But with Arcade, that was actually a huge selling point. I don't remember there being, I think the vast overwhelming majority never had an issue with it in Arcade. And I think one of the reasons why was because, again, design, how they went about it. You could absolutely turn in to safe zone areas where you weren't going to be contested. And there were plenty of those options, and those were still very profitable. You could go that extra mile to risk it. You could go fishing out in the open in the danger zone. It's going to be more rewarding, but you also want to go out there with some you also want to go out there with a bigger group, and you also should be upgrading your boat so that you can maneuver around faster. And also, for example, if you wanted to pirate, right? And I know I'm using a very specific example, but this kind of goes to what I'm saying. Design is important. If we're talking about fishing, which you could pirate, the best boat that you could use to pirate, to like be the bad guys and steal fishes, was a galleon. A galleon, which is this type of ship, a galleon was designed to go very fast north-south. So you were not going to outrun a galleon if you're heading north-south, but you could escape it if you're on a merchant ship, for example, and you're going east-west. I'm pretty sure I got that right. I played a lot of hours, but it's been a long time. But it was like east-west, you can outrun it. So like the position of where you would go fishing relative to your turn-in spots were also pretty important. And there are like all these other variables, that you could use. And you know what? It made it so that even if a big group came in, you could escape. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't fucking Jover. Like in Throne, you come across our alliance, it's over. Like the content is done. But
do you think it also exists in Ashes like that? Like, do you think
I don't know. You're right. That's why I'm in agreement with you saying that we haven't seen enough, and you're right in being skeptical with it. But I would disagree that it can't be done well, because it was done very well in Arcade. And as far as I know, Steven, the guy that's running Ashes, he played on my server, Kyrios, in Arcade. He was notorious, by the way. Which is like a lot of the OG Arcade people are kind of skeptical, because homie was like fucking RMT pay to win whale.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So, but I don't know. Maybe that puts it. I have no idea how it's gonna work, but so far, what he's like, the way he's been going about Ashes has been pretty solid. But yeah, I know that he's got that background in Arcade, and I'm not surprised to see that Ashes is very reminiscent of vanilla Arcade. But that would be my only point of contest to what you're saying. But I 100% agree with you in being skeptical, and it does depend on the design.
I mean, I completely agree with this open world risk versus reward stuff. It's actually something that I would love to see much more in games. I actually think the average world of an MMO is way too easy and way too safe. So, like, if you're going out of a town and there's like a fucking camp of goblins or something, you shouldn't be like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna run them over real quick and that's it, and then I go back to town. I do enjoy this the theme that they're trying to go for.
Sure.
But my point is kind of that I don't know if they understand the intricacies of what they're trying to make, and I also don't think that they even have anything in place yet that would allow for those intricacies.
Yeah, I feel like really, if you're gonna argue that point, it's just the benefit of the doubt thing. We're gonna find out Q3.
Yep.
And I'll be honest, I feel like I'm not really combating you much on this one, just because I also look at Ashes and I'm just not sure. It's a big question mark for me. And what I mean, guys, is I mean in terms of actual content and design. I think. What did you think of the combat, by the way? We're going to move on here in a bit because, I don't want to, we've got a few other games that we don't want to talk about, but what do you think about the combat? To me, the combat looked mid at best.
So I think combat is, I mean, imagine this, okay? Imagine a BDO or a Lost Ark with Ashes of Creation combat. Do you think those games would be successful?
BDO, absolutely not. What was the other one? You said
Lost Ark.
Of course not. Yeah, of course not.
So that's always kind of what I'm thinking about when I see combat like that, because maybe the game could have some cool stuff in it.
Sure.
Maybe there's some cool content, maybe cool dungeons or open world or PvP. But if the combat doesn't act like as a catalyst of those systems, oftentimes the game just dies, and it dies fast.
Combat is extremely important. I think everyone is in agreement that combat has to be good, but it doesn't have to be action combat. It doesn't have to be at the standard of BDO. WoW Classic, which is something I want to talk to you about when we get to the throne segment. But, WoW Classic is tab targeting, very old school classic tab targeting. Guild Wars 2, also another tab targeting, a little bit more hybrid. And those games are totally fine.
I mean, are they totally fine nowadays because they're good? Or the combat is good enough, or are they totally fine because they're riding coattails?
What do you mean?
Riding coattails? I don't think if you release like a classic WoW or a Final Fantasy today in 2024, and there's no existing established audience of those, would they be even nearly as successful? Would they create an impact like that?
If it was re-released today?
Yeah. Like without the pre-established, we love WoW, we love Blizzard games, old Blizzard stuff. Like if it's just a new thing, right? I don't think those games would have even like a fraction of the impact.
I don't think they would be determined though. I'm not deflecting this, but I don't think they would be strictly determined based off of their combat though.
Of course not. I think there's more to a game than just the combat, but I think it's important because it's such a key part of your moment-to-moment gameplay, right? It's it's all the time. You basically do it every time you log into the game. You do combat, unless you're maybe doing professions.
0 out of 10. What would you rate the combat that you've seen in Ashes? I mean, love throwing numbers out.
It's hard to say if I don't play it myself. But because there's always like small little things that make it feel much worse or better, like small little animation canceling or end of the animation like lag things. There's a lot of things that could make it feel even worse. But for 2024 combat, Not higher than a 5. Maybe a 4,
Okay.
I would guess.
Okay. I would honestly give it a 5. But with an asterisk. I think to truly understand the PvP, I think you have to actually experience it, because there could be some higher level mechanics that we don't know about, that it key inputs or something. But based off of what I've seen, I would give it a 5 at best. Like I'd have to be yeah. I'd be generous, very generous to give it a 5.
I mean, I think again, actually playing it might even be worse. So like even a
Could be.
4 might be generous.
True.
we would have to try it ourselves.
True. Are you playing in the are you playing the Alpha 2 beta test? Are you set up for that?
I did not pay for that. No, I refused.
Really?
I was thinking about it. More so than more for the content creator side of things, right?
Of course.
To say, oh, this game is again like a complete disaster, or maybe it's amazing and I was wrong or whatever, right? But then I decided that like $250 to play test something that they should pay me for is fucking insane.
Yeah.
Okay? So I said, nah, I'm not gonna do it. But it makes sense for content, obviously.
Sure.
But I said no.
Okay. All right. That's fair. Moving on. Let's talk about Throne, your favorite game. We should have some interesting conversations here. Okay. Throne and Liberty. Talk to me about Throne. What was your final rating of Throne? Because I heard it was changing a little bit, like 1 point or 2 points here and there.
Oh, at first, but when the auto combat was in, it was a 0. I thought it was the worst MMO I've ever played. Then they changed the auto combat. Although I also said beforehand that even if they changed so even if they changed the combat, that it might not really fix the game a whole lot, because everything's kind of designed around it. But they did fix the combat to an extent. And then I said it was like a 2. But that was obviously only from the perspective of a very early game. And as you know, early game in that game doesn't really matter at all. And for the most part, it's about the end game dungeons, the castles, sieges stuff, the guild versus guild drama, and the relationships and whatever.
Shit, the drama. Oh my god.
So I put it up like 1 more point because of that. So because I thought, that's a fair point. That's 3. I put it at a 3.
You put it at a 3. Okay.
That's my prediction, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. So what are the main issues that you had with Throne and Liberty, the live version, the actual live version?
So first of all, I still hate the combat, even more so than any tradition. Maybe not RuneScape because I didn't play it. Yeah. But I even hated it more than WoW, even classic WoW combat.
Why is that? Because why is that? Because as far as I know, and I want to be fair to you, because I don't want to put any type of preconceived notion, or I don't want to I don't want the audience to just be influenced by what I heard. But as far as I know, you reached a certain level in the game that that had you experience, a certain amount of the combat. But at the same time, you're saying that classic WoW is like one of the best MMOs, right? And there's no way
classic,
you can,
classic WoW combat was
really,
really good. Yeah, classic WoW combat was really, really good. In 2004. Okay. Nowadays, classic WoW combat is still satisfying and can be fun, but it's nowhere near good.
Okay.
Right?
So let me ask you this then. Where would you put classic WoW as an MMO today?
Just combat or overall?
Both.
Okay. So first of all, maybe we should say what the Throne Liberty combat system is. It's probably a 2.
Okay.
I would say.
So it's probably a 2 for you. Okay. So what would classic WoW be today?
Classic WoW
combat-wise.
It's not much higher. I would say maybe a 3 to 4-ish.
Okay.
But also probably more leaning towards a 3.5-ish, I would say.
Okay. So that's not as bad. Okay, because my thought process, what I heard was and this is why it's important to confront this and talk to it's important to actually talk about this to the person directly, because things can be taken out of context. Because what I was thinking, or what I heard, was you saying the combat rating for WoW Classic would be much higher, and I was like, really? Because it's really not that much different, the combat wise.
I mean, obviously, one thing that definitely is a little bit disingenuous because I play with 200 ping. That definitely made it
Okay,
worse, right?
sure.
And it was made it harder to judge how bad it really is,
Of
right?
course, of course.
But overall, I thought WoW felt a little bit more impactful. Like every hit, every ability felt more impactful. I also Classic WoW has way more abilities, first of all. So you have a little bit more options. Like even on a single class, if you just play one, you have like what?
Mm-hmm.
30 different abilities, although you probably don't
Mm-hmm.
even use half of them. But they have like these flavor RPG abilities. Oh, I can
Okay.
walk across water, or I can, because I'm this class, or
Mm-hmm.
I can teleport with that class, or I can make food with that
Mm-hmm.
class, or something like that, right? So in that way, I felt WoW had a little more flavor and a little more impact. But
Okay.
everything outside of that is probably very similar.
Okay. So, in my personal opinion, with all due respect, I feel like where you missed the mark with Throne and Liberty's combat was that I learned this by playing the game a lot, right? I played it a lot more extensively. I played it it's kind of crazy. When I went back to count the amount, I actually played it for a quarter of the year, Nico. I was like, holy
Yeah, that's
shit, I
crazy.
spent a quarter of the year. And people are like, done with Throne and Liberty already? I was like, bro, I played it for a quarter of the year on a foreign server. Okay, so the way the combat is designed in Throne, and this is why I give the example of it being more of a classic MMO, is that, and this is a big appeal to the overall game, by the way, is that your character, it might be the biggest appeal to the game, your character is always evolving. And as it evolves, the combat continues to get better and better and better. So, yes, if you're playing Sword and Shield, for example, at level 1, it's really bad. Like one of the worst. And I always give the example of Classic WoW Warrior because that is the class that I played in Classic WoW.
Mm.
And it's fucking bad. Like, there's no way you can tell me that Throne and Liberty's combat is bad and then and in the same breath say Classic WoW Warrior is great. You just can't say that. And if you're comparing end game Classic WoW Warrior, where it really picks up and it starts becoming fun, then you also have to compare Throne's combat at the end game, where it also really picks up. Because I could assure you, Sword and Shield, I could assure you, Greatsword, all those weapons, what it becomes at the end game is drastically different. Because it what it is, the first 10 levels versus level 50, very different. What it is at 50, and then going into the end game, let's say stage 1 end game, different. Let's say stage 2 end game, more different. Stage 3, and to be honest, I really think that is the biggest appeal to the game after experiencing it. So like for me, right, I was playing Greatsword Dagger, and it was like whatever. It was slow in the beginning, mana issues. All classes outside the staff have the mana issue, and you're just like, it's not amazing. The damage is smudge, but then you have options to how you want to build it. And then as you go up, it's like all of a sudden, holy shit, I'm getting these extra abilities. I'm getting the guillotine ability. I'm getting different options with gear sets. This gear set is giving me the option to be a little bit more elusive. This is giving me a little bit more a hard hitting heavy hit, which is essentially like doubling your damage on hit. I could play a little bit more evasive tanky. I can go full DPS. And then also the speed picks up, right? Because the classic part of it is your stats that you get really start to accumulate. So now all of a sudden my abilities are executing significantly faster. They're connecting quicker because how it feels clunky and a little disconnected in the beginning. You lose that as you progress. And sure, you can make the argument saying, well, you're kind of stripped and deprived. And then, you're getting that what's stripped back slowly. But to be honest, that is kind of the appeal. Like my Greatsword Dagger character now is so much different compared to level 50 and compared to level 10. And to be honest, if I continue to play it, I would continue to evolve the character. And I wholeheartedly believe that is one of the biggest appeals to Throne. So like for me, as someone that's experienced the evolution of the combat from early game to end game, I actually think that the combat is really good. Not like to the extent of BDO. Let's be real here. BDO, BNS, Lost Ark, these games are kind of goated in their respective categories. But I honestly think that the combat is right up there with vanilla Arcade and even almost to the level of Ion. I think Ion's combat is a little bit better, but I think it's close. I think it's in that category personally.
I mean, okay, let's assume it's as good as Arcade. Even that wouldn't be good, right? Even that nowadays would be an outdated.
Right. See, I feel like you have to preface that comment every time with nowadays, because like I would watch these clips of you too. I'd be like, what? Nico's saying classic WoW combat is good. You know what I'm saying? But no, okay, yeah. So yes, you're yeah.
And I think one thing that made it feel a lot cheaper, in my opinion, was also it's a setting you can disable it, I think. But if you click a melee ability and you're too far away, your character automatically walks there anyways. That's one thing that maybe is kind of a remnant of the autoplay or whatever, but that made it feel a lot cheaper. Like immediately.
Isn't that in WoW though? Don't you have that in WoW too?
No.
A lot of the old school MMOs had that, but yeah, I mean that was like how old. Yeah.
That's probably one thing, and again, it's hard for me to really say how like it is on a high level and how it is with zero ping or whatever, but it just felt a little bit clunky.
Yeah, I feel you on that. That to be honest, as someone that has played the game quite a bit, it kind of to be honest, if anything, it's kind of useful, but you don't really feel it later on as much, and you can also disable it. But that's, I mean, being able to turn something off, I've never really been a big fan of that argument, but yeah, it's actually kind of useful, but I digress. Because,
it's useful for sure,
Yeah. Let's move on here, and for those of you who are wondering, yes, we could sit here and talk about Throne the entire podcast, which is why moving forward, where each episode, we are going to be talking about a game individually so we can have the whole segment. Today, it's episode 1, general MMO talk, and we're just talking about upcoming MMOs and just getting like a very short perspective on each one, I guess, for lack of a better phrase. Blue Protocol. Blue Protocol is the other MMO that's coming out this year. Did you play Blue Pro? I don't know if you actually did. Did you?
Yeah,
you did?
On JP. Yeah.
On JP. How far did you get into it before you got banned? You got banned, right?
Oh, yeah, I got banned. I don't. What was the max level? 50, I think.
50 at the time.
Yeah, I think I was around level 30. Okay. Something like that before I got banned. Yeah.
Okay. What'd you think?
I like the combat more than Throne Liberty.
Okay.
They had although you had way less abilities, and you had very few abilities, it felt like, and I didn't like that. But the baseline felt a little bit better and a little bit more snappy, and there's a little bit more to it. Like, for example, if you do a dodge and a left click, it does another. It's like a combination of buttons that you can press and it does something else. Although I don't know how useful all of those things will be at the very end, right?
Yeah.
But it felt a little bit better on that department. I wasn't a fan of the segmented open world stuff at all. I think graphically it was good. I thought the pay to win stuff was very weird. And also the gearing in general that kind of ties into the pay to win with these, I don't know what they were called, these icons or spirits or like these weird.
Jesus, you're right. How did I forget the name? Chat, help me out here. Yeah, it was essentially your armor. That's what it was. Imagines. Yeah.
I wasn't a fan of that either. I thought that was really weird take. And obviously, since the game doesn't have PvP, I'm not as interested.
Sure.
So, but overall, I thought it was a little bit higher quality game, but lacked a lot of like more to it. The end game also looked weird. Like there was these weird arena modes where you'd go in, even the dungeons and the farming and everything felt a little. I mean, that's usual for Japanese games, in my opinion. It felt a little arcadey.
Okay.
And that's it's obviously subjective if you like that or not. But for me, it's not really that interesting in that sense.
I think for me, people are focusing on the wrong things when they talk about Blue Protocol, simply because most people haven't played the game. And if you've played the game, and then you start speaking a similar language. You and I, if we're talking about, let's say, Lost Ark, even Black Desert, it's like, you know that these are two individuals that are speaking and have substance because they've played the game, right? And I feel like the problem with Blue Protocol when it comes to content is content creators are just kind of milking the content, and they have nothing else to target other than the monetization, simply because they don't know much about the game. The reality, in my opinion, is that monetization, okay, outside of the monetization when it comes to pay to win specifically, is not the problem with the game. It's actually not the problem at all. It's so like just small. Like like, and if you play the game, I'm not gonna get into it too much here. We can do it maybe in another segment. But if you play the game, you'll understand. Like, it's so insignificant. The issue with Throne is far bigger, or it's not Throne. Sorry, Blue Protocol is far bigger than the pay to win systems in the game.
Yeah.
It's the lack of content, and like what you're saying, like the weird arena mode. I think TLDR, they've got a great game and graphic design. I even think the combat, to be perfectly honest, is actually pretty good. I personally enjoyed the combat, but they've got this shell that's pretty solid. But what's inside, the content design, is simply not good. It's not good enough. Like you said, the arena thing is supposed to be their kind of like ranking competitive thing. If you do the arena thing, it's boring. Like, it's just simply not great. It's mediocre at best. Like, you cannot tell me that you'll get 1,000 people to play it, and you're gonna get the majority of those players saying this is really fun. Like, you might get a lot of people will be like, yeah, it's okay, you know. But when the majority of the people are saying, yeah, it's okay, that's not good. You know what I mean? Like, you want you want some of your premier,
especially when it's new.
Exactly, when it's new, you want some of your content, your main content, to be experienced in a way where your audience is like, this is really fun. People play Black Desert, and once you get all your skills, you're like, the combat is really fun. You know what I mean? Lost Ark, whether you like it or not, you do the raids, you're like, the raids are good. You know what I mean? Like, the majority will say the raids are good, and that's what you need. That's the standard. And Blue Protocol just does not have any of that at the end game. It just doesn't. It's just,
and I didn't even get to the end game, right? And I already felt like that.
And you already, right?
And you already had these checklist boards where you had the, like, almost like quests, like little tasks. Oh, you need to go to this area. You need to kill this and this.
Yeah.
And then you kind of progress these passes that you have.
Yeah.
And they give you something. Like, all of that felt also incredibly repetitive. Like, after 5 hours of playing, I felt like I've done the same quest 10 times on 10 different passes.
Right.
And it's kind of even the rewards didn't feel super satisfying.
Talk about the boards, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
They did, to be fair to them, they did improve the boards quite a bit. So it is better, but yeah, I think the end game vertical progression or the main content is just not there. So, like, my thing was this: if that's not there, then what needs to be there is like the role play RP social infrastructure, and it doesn't have that either. And then on top of that, the final pillar, which is the smallest pillar, would be like making your character look nice, right? When it comes to that part, that is where monetization is kind of bad. But like, I don't think that's as significant as pay to win, because pay to win is far more, significant. But like, in order for you to make your character look good, it's pay to win in that regard, because you're locked behind a gacha system, which is very, very expensive, which, to the point where they actually reduced the prices. They acknowledged that it was too expensive. They reduced the prices on it. Free to play, you look garbage. Gacha, you don't even look great with gacha, to be honest. Even the skins that come with the gacha is not that, you don't have that many options. They don't look that great, but it's insanely expensive. So even in that department, it's kind of an L. I just feel like they have way too much to work on that game. I just, like, for me, every time I hear Blue Protocol talk, I'm just like, okay, like, hold on. It's like, pay to win, vertical progression, no, it's insignificant. Pay to win to look cool, yeah, very predatory, bad. Okay, bigger problem, zero content in the game. End game. That's my TLDR breakdown on it.
Like, for me, for Throne, I just straight up dislike the game, right? And that's why I stopped playing. But for Blue Protocol, I felt like even halfway through the leveling, I felt burned out.
Really?
I felt okay. Yeah, I was like, okay, well, I mean, I'm doing the same thing again, but just in another zone.
Yeah.
I'm not really getting even new abilities anymore
Yeah.
because now I have all of them.
Yeah. I wonder
it's
if
like,
that was
okay.
before they made the changes. Because before, like when I first played with Stoops, I had the same criticism. I was the Nico, by the way. I was the Nico in that because I was saying this grind to end game is terrible. I was like, it's too grindy, it's too slow, it's bad. And then of course Stoops was like, I don't know, man, I kind of enjoyed the journey, you know, the pacing.
That sounds like Stoops.
Yeah. I was like, bro, this is bad. And they sped it up after, and it was significantly better. I'm just wondering if you played it during that time or if you played it after. I'm not really sure.
I think I played it when it launched, right?
Okay.
I played the beta and then when it actually launched as well.
Okay. So you didn't like it during launch because launch was the fixed version or a fixed up version.
Yeah, I didn't like that either.
Okay.
Like, I think the main thing for me was the dungeons also felt repetitive, so I wasn't really looking forward to the dungeons. Like even doing the dungeon one time didn't feel good. Like maybe the last boss was okay, but like everything else in it was like, ugh.
What? Like, elaborate on that.
Like you go into the dungeon. I remember this one.
It just wasn't fun.
You're like in a spaceship, and there's like a million different ads that have way too much health, and it's just chaos. Everyone is just attacking random shit. It takes 2 years to kill a single mob, and then after 20 minutes of going through slogs of mobs that don't do anything or give you anything, you get to a final boss that is somewhat interesting, and then you have to do it all over again.
Best.
Yeah.
Mediocre at best. Okay, so Nico, you got banned. So let me just enlighten you here. The original endgame, they've added some more dungeons and they raised the level cap, but the original endgame, which would be our endgame, by the way, when we get it, what would you do? What would you say if I told you the endgame loop, the endgame dungeons, was that same dungeon, but just scaled to level 50?
I would not play the game. I would quit.
Because that's what it is. That's what it was.
I already wanted to quit in the leveling when I did it the first time.
That's what I'm saying. Like the whole thing with the beta test was, okay, this dungeon, it's like, okay, you know what? For a level 10 dungeon, it's not bad. Okay, true.
I actually like the first dungeon more, the first few.
Yeah, and then you get to level 50, and you're like, what the fuck? It's the same dungeon, just scaled up. Like it's
terrible,
like,
man.
So it's like, okay, well, you're gonna have me grind this. How bad's the grind for like my alternate abilities? Like if there's like a skill tree, huge grind. And for the plugins, huge grind. So I gotta run this a lot. So I gotta run this monotonous dungeon that's not fun to do a lot. And then the question is, why am I running this again?
Yeah. What
because
for what?
There is no raid after that. That's it. To do that dungeon better.
Nice.
Like that's what it is. And I was like, and I'm just like thinking, there's no way that this feedback is not being given to Bandai. There's no way. There's no chance. There's like it just takes one person to be like, hey, there's nothing to do. Like once you hit the end game.
And even the things that you can do are not very fun.
Exactly. Like there's no, oh man, that was, I don't know. I'm actually planning on revisiting Blue Protocol and doing the new dungeons. I've seen them. It's the same shit, but you know, I'm going to go and do it myself because I'm, you know, one of those guys that I have to like do it and then be critical of it. But anyways, Jesus, man, moving on. Okay. This is going to be the last game on our list. Terrace Land.
Honestly, I don't even know if we like have to talk about that one a whole lot. I played it a little bit. I don't know what that was, a beta or whatever. Yeah, it's definitely killing something. It's my enthusiasm for the future of MMOs is what it's killing, if anything, because that game, it was basically retail WoW, but like from a Happy Meal. You know, like the little plastic toys you get. That's basically what it was.
Bro, I didn't feel, outside of a few things, I didn't feel that much of a similarity to WoW. And what I mean by that is this, like, yeah, obviously like the BGs, like queuing up for them and that design and some of the ogres and some of like the assets in the game. Yeah, of course. Yeah. I'm not saying that there were no similarities, but if like it did not feel like a copy paste game is what I'm saying. It would have been better if it was. Like, to be perfectly honest. To be perfectly honest, what did you think? Because like if I played that game and you told me nothing about its history and WoW, I'd have been like, oh yeah, like it looks like they've drawn a lot of inspiration from WoW, like a WoW.
The most direct similarity that I saw was like the dungeons, how they were set up with the damage meters and stuff. That was like, okay, yeah, this feels a lot like retail WoW.
Okay, right.
The rest of it, I mean, I didn't really get super far once again because I couldn't do it to myself anymore after like 10 hours. I was like, there's no way I will ever look at this game ever again.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's
chat. I want you guys to write. For those of you who played Terraslad, don't write a rating if you haven't played. If you've played the game, 0 out of 10, what would you give it? 0 out of 10, what would you give it? And while chat writes that up here, how many hours did you put into Terraslad? I don't blame you, by the way, for not being able to put up with it.
Around maybe 10 if I'm generous.
Okay. Where did it lose you? At what point did it lose you?
I don't know if it ever had me. I don't think there was a single point where I was like, damn, that's really fun, or I'm looking forward to this, or it just felt like
I like the art style.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't terrible, but I think graphically nowadays to be terrible is pretty hard to do.
Did you hear about the improvements that they were making? Apparently they made improvements.
No, I didn't.
They have one of the improvements I think is actually a big W, which is they ungender locked the classes. So there's no more gender lock. That's a W.
I don't really care about that personally.
But that's an objective W. I'll give them
that. It's obviously a positive. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I have no idea, but I heard they have made some changes, and there's like another beta test coming up. And yeah, I right now I'm not really sure if I want to cover it or not, but yeah,
I don't think. I mean, I don't know why anyone would even. Like, what does it do better than another game?
What does it have to do to get back on the map and to win people over? Maybe not an eco too low, but like at least some kind of
mobile.
Go mobile.
Like honestly,
it kind of.
I think that it felt mobile. Yeah, exactly. I think that's the only audience that would bear with that.
It's cross-platform. Yeah. It is cross-platform.
Or go full mobile or whatever. Go the full mobile route, right?
Yeah.
And just like as a PC player, I don't see a reason why you would ever even consider it, right? So just drop the PC part and just go full on the mobile part and just make it a mobile MMO, which is not what they were intending, I don't think, because if they were wanting to replace WoW in China, they're not hitting that mark at all. Yeah.
I thought it was wild. I thought it was completely wild how they were saying our game is completely non-pay to win.
Yeah, that's also another thing. Yeah.
And they monetized their closed beta. Not only was there pay to win, but they were actually monetized. So what I do know is they said that the closed beta benefits card was not going to be in the game. Some people thought of that as a W, and in a lot of ways it is. Okay, sure, it's less pay to win. Maybe they probably removed it because of the complaints, right? But that means that you're talking about a group that said their game is pay to win, and they monetized progression in a beta test, in a closed beta test. Like, what? Who does that? Like, when I played the game, I was immediately hit by like 500% rebate, buy now and then you'll get these transferred on, like, I was like, what the fuck? I'm like, they are really trying to monetize this closed beta. How can you go out and say that your game is completely free to play or completely non-pay to win and come out with a beta test that is clearly trying to make money? Blew my mind.
It's baffling. The only other game that we probably like didn't mention it was the Blade and Soul thing, right?
Yeah, the Blade and Soul. Yeah. I think so. Blade and Soul, I think, is a game just because we're not 100% sure Neo's coming out, and I might have some news with Neo relatively soon. So I think we might. I think we should probably, because I feel like that could be a long conversation. So yeah. I think maybe we save that for another podcast because we have already gone over the hour mark, and I really want to try and keep these like under an hour. So I think we'll call it here for today. Just to keep these short. I don't want the YouTube video to say like an hour and 30 minutes. You know what I mean? I want to try and keep it short. It goes by quick.
Hey guys, man. next time we have a 10-hour podcast just talking about one single game, because that's how long we could do it.
We could.
Yeah.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. But yeah, we'll call it here. Do you have any closing thoughts or comments you want to make, Nico?
Stop being always supporting of every shit game, okay? Give them some good critique, guys, so we get good games, please. Thank you.
Nico, I'd love to see the day where you actually support a fight. Hold on.
I support. Hey, if a game is good, I'm all in, man. All right. I have my chips right here.
So let's, okay, fair. So we'll round this video out with this. Name one. Name me one. What? Name me one good MMO that you
now
that you support. That you support.
Right now in 2024. What an MMO you should play?
You heard it here. You heard it here. And with that, don't forget to like and subscribe. That's crazy, Nico. I can't really?
Yeah.
No. Holy shit.
I just said that.
I'm gonna use that as the intro, bro. I'm gonna use that as the intro. Okay, holy shit. Oh, this video is gonna pop off. Like and subscribe. You can find Nico's personal socials in the description. Let us know what you guys think in the comment section below. Let us know what games you guys would like us to cover. We are moving forward. We are gonna be talking about individual games for each episode. So thank you so much for watching, and we will see you in the next video. Peace.
Bye-bye.